I'm back. Frick. Doing another reaction for you guys. I really appreciate the just the amount of support lately. It's been freaking insane. And to tell you the truth, I'm actually enjoying it. Some of you guys are a little hostile in here, but I appreciate those of you guys who are walking me through this. It's pretty awesome. Of course, I'm not going to get everything. America does not operate the same. Trust me. I live here. This reaction is brought to you by This reaction is brought to you by John's Tunes. He said, every country England has invaded is a good reaction video. So we're about to find out. So guys, thanks so much. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like the reactions. This will be our third reaction video. I can't wait till we get out of politics and start getting about food. If you guys have any good food, hit me up, dude. I can eat. Trust me, I can eat. Americans can eat. Also, I'll be putting my Twitch link down low, Discord link, and my merch link. So you don't have to get the merch, but it is supportive. And if you don't get it, I'm not going to hate you. All right, here we go.
For a good chunk of the past few centuries, this music was the final boss music played for people across the entire world. The English and later the British have been responsible for invading and conquering more countries and people than any other nation in human history. And honestly, it's startling just how many places they've been to. In this video, I'm going to do my best at attempting to visualize all of Britain's invasions and conquests for you, continent by continent, in as brief a time as possible. So let's begin with the closest continent to Britain, Europe. Ireland was the first target of British conquests and was invaded as early as 1169. Within 400 years of gradual conquests, the entire island was ruled by the British and remained that way until most of it was granted independence in 1921. Historically, France has probably been invaded by the English more times than any other country in the world.
That makes sense. So for those of you who do not know, my family is like a mutt. Here, I will let you know exactly what I consist of real quick. I did the 23andMe. You can hate on me for doing it. I don't care. I found it interesting. I am 96.2% British and Irish, 35% French and German, 0.8% Finnish, 5.7% broadly Northwestern European, 2.4% Spanish and Portuguese, 0.1% broad European, whatever that means, just all over the place. 0.6% Congolese and Angolan, 0.5% Filipino, Nigerian, and then 0.1% Filipino, Austronesian, and 0.1% unknown. My family is from Waterford, Ireland, the more recent, and then I have relatives from west side of Liverpool. I think it was Bristol. Yeah. Anyway, I'm a bit of a mutt myself, and I've heard all sorts of things. My family, America loves to claim their Irish heritage. I don't know why that is. We think the Irish are pretty BA. You may have different things. Let's not comment about it. I don't want to get toxic in here. But anyway, here we go.
Just take a look at this huge list of invasions. There's not even enough time to talk about a third of these, and for a time, all of this territory inside of modern France was directly controlled by the English, with Calais being the final piece that fell in 1557. Well, except for that time when the British took over Corsica for a couple years. The British continue to invade Spain by the millions every winter, but in the past, they've come with a lot less friendly intentions. English and later British soldiers invaded under the Black Prince in 1367 and continued on through the first, second, third, and fourth raids on Cadiz and that time when the British took over Gibraltar and Minorca. They gave Minorca back, but decided on keeping Gibraltar forever.
That makes sense.
History, the British have invaded Belgium.
The last video I saw the Gibraltar mentioned.
But that wasn't always the case. They conducted two pretty large-scale invasions of modern-day Belgium in 1654 and again in 1701. And Flanders itself was ruled by the English for a few years in the 14th century. The Netherlands was one of England's historical arch rivals, and so there were plenty of invasions going in this direction across the 17th and 18th centuries. In 1940, the British technically invaded and took over Iceland peacefully for a year in order to prevent it from falling into the hands of the Germans. But this was heavily protested by the Icelandic government at the time, so in my books, it still counts as an invasion. Italy, of course, was invaded by the British Army during the Second World War as well in 1943, but there were plenty of invasions before then, dating back to Richard the Lionheart's invasion in 1190. Germany, too, was obviously invaded by the British Army in 1945, and northwestern Germany was occupied by the British.
So we're big, America's big on war. I mean, God bless us, right? So when it comes to World War II in that era right there, my great-grandfather, G.B. Pack, was actually a cook. He spent a lot of time in Germany and a lot of time in Italy. Yeah, and then his brother-in-law, my Uncle Paul, was one of the final 8 that he actually was one of the final 8 at the battle over the Rhine, which I believe is a river.
For 3 years until 1948, but a lot of German territory was ruled by Britain long before then. The islands of Heligoland were British for most of the 19th century, and the Kingdom of Hanover was effectively ruled under a personal union for over a century between 1714 and 1837. Austria was also invaded in 1945, and the southwest of the country was occupied for a decade. Norway was invaded in 1810 and 1812 during the Napoleonic Wars when it was a part of Denmark-Norway because Denmark was aligned to France, so obviously Denmark was invaded during that time as well.
Wow.
Finland, Estonia, and Latvia were all briefly invaded
Holy
by
frick.
small units during the Crimean
You guys
War
are freaking moving out,
They
dude.
were all part of the Russian Empire at the time, and of course, Russia itself was invaded then too.
What
as
the
well
frick?
As in 1918, when the
Scandinavia,
British took over a large
Western
chunk of
Russia?
northern Russia for a time in their
Oh,
fight
is that
against the
northern Russia?
Bolsheviks.
Oh.
The territory of modern Ukraine was invaded by British Army units during the Crimean War. The British took over the Croatian island of Vis between 1807 and 1814 during their fight against Napoleon. The British Army
Wow.
had boots and guns on the ground in Bosnia recently between 1992 and 95, fighting against the Bosnian Serbs, and around the same time, the RAF also carried out bombing strikes against Serbian Serb targets in Serbia in 1999. Montenegro was briefly blockaded and invaded in 1913 during the First Balkan War. The British owned the westernmost Ionian islands of Greece between 1815 and 1863 before they gave them back, while Bulgaria was invaded and almost entirely occupied by the British Army between 1918 and 1919 at the
Holy
end of
God,
World War I.
man.
Cyprus was a British protectorate between 1878 and 1914 when they decided to just outright annex it to piss off the Turks. And
Here's the thing, dude. Like, all this was like, it seems like it was just ongoing, dude. Like, and what I mean by that is the year, there's not a lot of gap between when you guys are moving out, either taking over places, majority seeming by force, or just putting boots on the ground. And then obviously Iceland was like, an acceptance. It was a peaceful kind of takeover, or let us tarry here because of what Germany was up to, or Germany's potential. It's crazy, man. You guys are freaking moving.
And it remained annexed until 1960, except for 2 small chunks that are still British today. Turkey itself was massively invaded by the British during World War I, and part of it was occupied between 1919 and 1923. That wraps up Europe, so let's move on to Asia. Next,
And we're back.
Modern-day Israel and Palestine, as well as Jordan, were British-controlled from the end of World War I to 1948 and 1946, respectively. Lebanon and Syria were both
Respectively,
occupied from
okay.
the Vichy French government briefly.
The
during
Holy
World War
Land.
II. Iraq was ruled between 1919 and 1932, and
Interesting
invaded again
spelling
during the
on
Second
Iraq.
World War, and again in 1991, and again in 2003. Kuwait was a colony for over 60
I've been to
years
Kuwait.
until 1966. Georgia and Azerbaijan were both invaded and occupied right at the end of World War I.
Holy God, dude. Look at
Iran has
that.
been invaded at least 3 times, with the most notable example being the joint Anglo-Soviet invasion of 1941. Turkmenistan was invaded in 1918 to prevent Bolshevik influence from spreading any further. Afghanistan is
I've
a
been there.
favorite British
I've been to
invasion
Afghanistan and
spot since it's
Kuwait.
been invaded in 1839.
I knew about
1878,
the Afghanistan.
1919, and again in 2001.
So right there, you guys can't see it because I'm freaking in the way. But it says Afghanistan 2001 to 2014. I was there with you guys during that. Pretty wild.
Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman
I've been there.
were all controlled by the British until the
Been
early
to
1970s.
UAE.
While a chunk of Yemen was controlled for over a century between 1839 and 1967. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka were all, of course, invaded many times and out.
So I knew. Call me stupid, bro, or whatever. I don't care. I don't care. I honey badger this junk. I don't freaking care. India, I knew that you guys had a big influence there, mainly because I'm a freaking movie buff, and Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, you guys helped him out, and Indiana Jones is my boy. So Yeah, dude. Love you guys. All right, here we go.
Outright ruled by the British Empire in parts for nearly 2 centuries between 1757 and 1947. Nepal was invaded in 1814 but never successfully conquered. Bhutan was invaded in 1772 and again in 1864 and was sort of conquered as a protectorate between 1910 and 1948. Burma/Myanmar was invaded in 1826 and was definitely successfully conquered and ruled through 1947. Thailand was briefly invaded in 1945 since they were allied to Japan in World War II, and so was Vietnam in the
Look
same
how
year,
far
but
out you
established
guys
to support
went.
the French government against the growing independence movement. Malaysia and Singapore were each conquered and ruled up until the 1950s and 1960s. Brunei was conquered and ruled up until the 1980s.
That recent.
Whereas the Philippines were briefly invaded during the 7 Years' War. China got invaded a lot, and Hong Kong was a colony until as recently as 1997. And while not outright invaded, part of Japan was occupied following World War II between 1946 and 1952. And finally, Indonesia was invaded a bunch during the Napoleonic Wars since it was a Dutch colony aligned to France at the time. Next up, Oceania. Australia and New Zealand, of course, were invaded by the British and established as colonies that each gained independence in 1931. Papua New Guinea was also a British colony for a time, as were the island countries of Fiji, Kiribati, the Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. Let's move back over to Africa next, which the British have violently visited a lot. In terms of just places the British outright colonized after invasions, there's the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria, Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa, along with parts of modern-day Somalia and Guinea. Senegal was briefly invaded and had some of their coastline taken over in the 1700s,
dude.
while during the Second World War, the British invaded the French colonies of Djibouti, Madagascar, and Comoros after they aligned themselves with the Nazi Vichy regime, and the Italian colonies of Libya, Eritrea, and Ethiopia, although they had also invaded Ethiopia much earlier in 1868. And as German colonies right before World War I, the British also invaded Togo and Cameroon without annexing them afterwards. For the final area of the world left to discuss, let's move over to the Americas. All of Canada was a British colony until 1931, while Newfoundland remained until 1949. The United States, of course, was a colony until 1776, and was invaded again in 1812, and the modern states of Oregon and Washington were claimed right up until 1846. As far as other outright...
I did not know that. So 1776 is like, you know, the America stuff, you know, like we did it, we broke off, but these dates right here, what? I don't, maybe I do know that. When was the Revolutionary War? Was it the French Revolutionary where the natives fought? Maybe it's just stop asking questions out loud because it makes me look more dumb. All right, anyway, and so the Oregon thing, I didn't know the Western state. Washington? You mean Washington? This dude, okay.
British colonies here go. There was the Bahamas, Jamaica, Belize, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana. Besides colonies, Cuba... So
this stuff right here doesn't surprise me either, because we all know that the pirate's voice always has like a Scottish or Irish dialect, you know, obviously, which would bleed into, you know, a lot of the UK peoples. And anytime I watch a pirate movie, like I said, I love movies, Long John Silver, whatever, it's always from a UK style of writing, UK characters, develop UK characters arc. And obviously it's based off, you know, true stories or at least geographical terrain, and boom, here we got it. So that is freaking cool, dude. And also, I've been watching Outlander like religiously, and that show's freaking fire.
Was invaded and occupied during the 7 Years' War in 1762. Haiti was invaded in 1793 during the French Revolutionary Wars. The Dominican Republic was invaded way back in 1655 in an attempt at conquest under Oliver Cromwell. Parts of the east coast of Honduras and Nicaragua were conquered and ruled for nearly 2 centuries until 1819. They sent the Navy to invade Mexico in 1861 to force them to repay some debts, and during the splendidly named War of Jenkins Year, aka the more lame-sounding War of the Austrian Succession, the British invaded a lot of Spain's colonies, including Panama, a huge Colombia, and ultimately Peru.
Y'all really had it out for Spain.
The British took over Suriname because it was a Dutch colony, and they were allied with the revolutionary French and later Napoleon. They also invaded Martinique and Guadeloupe because they actually were French during the Napoleonic Wars. Venezuela was invaded in 1902 as part of the so-called Venezuela crisis to force the country to repay some debts they had defaulted on, kind of Mexico, while Argentina and Uruguay.
You guys trying to get your money, bro. I get it.
Well, in
no, I get it.
When Spain and her colonies were still allied with Napoleon. And that pretty much sums up all of the territory the British have ever ruled and all of the countries this small island has ever invaded. There are a total of 65 countries today who celebrate their independence days from the British Empire. The empire used to rule over a quarter of all the world's land at the same time and was the biggest empire in human history. And in total, today, there have been 117 modern countries that have been aggressively invaded by the British armed forces.
Holy frick! There's like 190 of them.
Representing a total of 60% of all the world's nations, which is almost the same number of countries that you can watch this video in. YouTube is available in 130 countries now, about 2/3 of them.
That was freaking insane. So that's freaking awesome, man. I didn't realize, I knew you guys had a big expansion as far as like where you reached out to. I just didn't realize all the countries and all the, you know, provinces and territories and stuff like that. So that's pretty flabbergasting to know. So yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah, dude. So yo, I appreciate you recommending this video. I'll definitely learned a lot today. I'm gonna go back and watch it again as soon as it's over. Well, I gotta edit this video first. Hey, if you guys got any food you want me to react to, or if you want to keep doing this, I'm totally fine with it, but maybe I'm just hungry. Maybe I just need to eat some food. Hey, love you guys. Thanks for everything. Thanks for the support. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a follow, or, you know, check me out on my other social media platforms followed in the description. Pointed at my penis, didn't mean it.